Well, it seems that I recorded a bunch of stuff, or I thought I was recording a bunch of stuff. Um, and I did and I didn't, and I didn't get all the audio. So this is going to be a little bit of a summary video of setting up the the HUD, the our basic widget class and our widget controller class. So let's just first of all look at the summary of what that's going to look like. What the concept is that we have our visual display, our HUD, and we have our attribute data and other game source data that we're going to be interested in. And so what we want to be able to do is have our HUD elements, all our widgets, uh, to be able to have them receive data when data changes, no matter where or how in the game, and respond to it by updating its UI. And and we don't want to be too tightly coupled with that kind of stuff because otherwise we have too many dependencies. So we will. So what I've done shown here is basically our overall screen will be our overall HUD, right? We'll create an overlay for it where all of our widgets are going to show up and live. One such, and then that that overlay widget, right? So it's going to have this controller. We're going to call it their widget controller. So it's going to have a little widget controller. We're going to have other items such like all of our attributes. So we're going to create an attribute menu widget as a good starting point. And it's going to have a widget controller. And these widget controllers are going to have callbacks and bindings to our attribute data and our player controller and stuff like that there. And so that's what we want to do. So these are the three classes that we want to create. We want to create a HUD class. We want to create a widget class. And we want to create a controller class. And then we'll pull all those together. So what I had done, uh, probably in a long, it wasn't very long, but it was kind of a confused bit of a video. Anyways, so what you need to do is go into your C++ classes and you will be in your public directory because you won't have a UI subdirectory yet. So you'll be in public. And what you want to do is create a HUD class. So you'll go to public, we'll right click or go to new C++ class. You can just scroll down the list here and you can select HUD and you can go next. And here you would create a UI directory to stuff all of our UI stuff in there. And I called it HFX HUD. So I'm going to cancel out of that because I already got it. After you've done that, you can it'll come up, it'll want you to recompile. You'll say no. You can save all. You can close the editor. You'll go back to C++, into Visual Studio or whatever you're using, and you will have your HUD classes available. You can compile this and rerun your editor, and now you'll be here, and you'll have your C++ HUD class. When you're here, you can create a user widget. So from here, now you would just go C++ class, go to all classes and go user widget. And you would pick user widget and go next. And in this same directory, I created HFX user widget, right? I'm going to cancel out of that. And at the same time now, even without restarting, so you can say no to the pop-up that comes and you can save all. This won't be visible yet. But what you can do here is then just right click again and say new C++ class, go to all classes, and this we're going to create our widget controller class. And it is based right at the very top of the hierarchy here, and we're going to just make it an object, a UObject class. So you just go to object, you'd go next. I called it HFX widget controller. So I typed in here HFX widget controller, and I left it sit in my UI directory. So you can create that class. It'll come up, you'll say no, you can save all, and you'll close your editor and you'll return back, and you will have your widget controller classes, your widget classes, and your HUD classes. And they won't be filled in obviously, but I'll step you through that right now. So starting with the HUD class. So it should start with all of these includes. And one one public section that we're going to create is an initialize overlay function. This is kind of forward looking right now because we haven't created our overlay yet, but what we want to be able to do is initialize our overlay for our HUD, and that's all part of our widget controller class and things like that. And and yeah, so there's a as I'm trying to refresh this, is I'm a little bit out of sync, but just stick with me through this and we'll get there. So let's create an initialize overlay, and we want to get a player controller pointer, so a player controller named PC, a player state, PS, our uAbility system component pointers, so these are all pointers, um, and we call it ASC for ability system component, and a U attribute set pointer attribute set. And you'll need to forward declare your uAbility system component and a U attribute set. So those are the base classes for those two items. And again, I created my public, protected, private, and a public section for getters and setters. Whether I end up using them, we'll see. Implementing this initialize overlay in our HUD CPP file, we don't do anything yet. Okay, so it's just a placeholder at this point. Our user widget. Okay, so this is what these are going to hold references to things, all of our base functionality of our user widgets. So that we're going to build all of our controls for our HUD, including that overlay, will spawn up or be created out of this base class. And so what we want is to give it knowledge of or link it to a widget controller. So we're going to create a T object pointer of type U object, because that's what our widget controller was, and I called it widget controller, and make it blueprint read only so that we can set it there and then access it in blueprints. I guess that's right. And from within blueprints, we want to be able to call a function to set the widget controller, so that on the designer side, in the editor side of things, people can create a widget and then they can assign it to a widget controller. And widget controllers, again, they're going to be built off of our base class that you're going to see in a second here. But they will be tailored specific to the type of widget that they are, so that they can do whatever other logic that that particular widget needs to be able to display or show that data appropriately. But we want to be able to set that widget, and we could do it probably a couple of different ways, but we're going to do it through blueprints. So we created a U function that's blueprint callable, called set widget controller. It's going to bring in a pointer of a U object, and we're going to say in widget controller, so the input widget controller. So that's what we will see. Um, Implementing this, creating the definition of it, we get this, and all we're going to do is set our member variable widget controller to the one that's been passed in. And then we're going to call this other function widget controller set. So this is kind of like after we've set it, we're going to call that it's been set. And that is a blueprint. So this is a protected function. So this is a blueprint implementable event. So this is a U function, blueprint implementable event. And we called it a void widget controller set. And we don't define it here. This will be controlled and implemented from blueprints. So that's the start of those two classes. Now the funny one or the different one is this widget controller. So this is a creation of our own, and what we know is from what we wanted from here, we wanted our widget controller to know stuff about the widget and to know stuff about the data. And we know that the data is linked to the player state or the player controller and other things that are going on. So this widget controller needs to kind of know all of those kinds of things, like the player state and the player controller. It needs to know about the attribute set and the ability system component. And so that's what we're going to um, create for the widget controller. So in the widget controller, it needs to have a generated body. I think it starts up with that anyways. It might not. I can't recall exactly. And what the first things that we wanted to do was under the protected section, we want to create these member variables. And so they are U properties, blueprint read only, and we put them in a category called widget controller. The first one is going to be a T object pointer of type player controller, a player controller, and we'll call it player controller. You can copy that U property down and make another T object pointer called player state of type a player state, and copy that same U property down again. And you can create a T object pointer of the U ability system component type. We called it ability system component. And then created a U property, copied it down again, and it's a T object pointer of U attribute set, and we called it attribute set. So those will be the main those will be the main member variables of our widget controller. And what we want to be able to do or have is an easy way to manage setting and accessing this information with our widget controller. So what we've done is we've created a struct, and we called it F widget controller params, or that of that type, F widget controller params. It's a blueprint type. It's a ustruct blueprint type. It needs a generated body. We created a constructor for it, a default one that's just empty, called F widget controller params, right? And then we've created one that will take in our player controller. So it's a type A player controller pointer, player controller PC, A player state pointer, player state, U ability system component, U attribute set, AS. And then Um, and then it sets the player controller PC, player state, ability system component, and ability system component, and attribute set. We define the struct variables. We set them to initial values, basically just giving them null pointers to start off with. And they're U properties that are edit anywhere, and they're blueprint read write. So that's the struct that we create to hold and push back and forth that data, or mostly pull, I guess. So what we want to be able to do is call when we create a widget controller, we want to set its controller parameters, right? So let's create a blueprint callable function down here in the public section of our class. So it's a U function that's blueprint callable. It's a void function, and we're going to say set widget controller parameters. It's a constant f widget controller params, and we just call it WC params. Creating a definition of that, all it does is it takes in that struct of f widget controller params and then sets each one of our member variables on our widget controller to the values that were passed to it in those parameters. We're going to want two other base functions. We want it to broadcast out initial values, and we want another virtual void to bind callback to dependencies. And so when we implement those, they're going to be nothing on the base class. These will take on their life in the subclasses that will follow. And if this whole thing confuses you, well, I'm not too far out of the boat with that as well. It's a bit to grasp without a lot of um, example at the moment. But to be able to get to those examples, we need to create some HUD elements and some widgets. And as we start to build that up, we will start to see how these really work together. And then at that time, both you and I will both gain a little bit more understanding of how these are actually working together. As I said before, as I learn things that are valuable and I want to commit them better into my mind, that's when I'm creating these videos. So to do that for myself and to share it with you. And so it's not always hard and fast in my mind, but that's what this is all about. And we're going to get through it because I keep learning, and that's what we're going to do next. We're going to start to create. Oh, what we can do now, let's do this because I've done it, but you wouldn't have done it yet. So after you've got this set, um, you can build your project, right? And you should compile with no problem. And some small things, there might be some typos that you've made, or you might have forgot like a U on the of the types here and there. So just if that's the case, just follow back and just look for that you've got things defined appropriately. Like for instance, we forward declared our U ability system and our attribute set here, um, and lo and behold, I haven't forward declared anything here yet. I haven't done anything with it yet, but maybe it Maybe it'll work. Maybe it doesn't know it, but right now it doesn't need it. So we'll see where that goes. And I know that that is probably something that'll come up. Um, but that's fine. So once you get this to compile, and you shouldn't be an issue there. Just going to quickly look at each one of these. Everything is looking fine. Yeah, because these aren't implemented anywhere, so it doesn't really care about it, I don't think. Um, when we go back to the editor, so restart and get into your editor, you can go to game and open your game mode base blueprint. So I've got mine here. And what you can do is go into your HUD class and set it to your BP. I set it mine to BP HFX HUD. And you can compile that. And then when you go back to your game world settings for your map, you should see your HUD class show up as that item. Um, and I think that is all that you will see at this point. And so yeah, so now let's get into and figure out what we need to get some UI going. And that's what we'll do starting next video. Thanks. Okay. I may have stepped over one particular item here. You wouldn't probably have a BP HFX HUD or whatever you've called yours. What I need to do to get that is go to your C++ class of your HFX HUD, right click it, and then choose Create Blueprint class on HFX HUD. And I had created a subfolder under UI for HUD, and that's where I had placed mine. And that's where, so once you have created that, you can have that set in your HUD class, because here you might have, in the last video, you might have selected this just to the C++ class, which would have been no different. But the BP one is the one that we're going to want to use going forward. So make sure that BP HFX HUD is the one that's selected there. Okay, so that's just a little correction there.